Welcome back. You're watching CNN News 18. We are now cutting across to live visuals of Prime Minister Modi with Italian Prime Minister Giorgia Meloni. They are currently at the Colosseum in Rome. The visuals on your screen. Remember, Prime Minister Modi concluded his visit in Norway, soon after which he is now landing in Italy. He is currently visiting Colosseum with Italian Prime Minister Giorgia Meloni. For more on this, let's just go across to CNN News 18, Sanjay Suri, who's live with us from Rome. Sanjay, significant visuals coming in. They only go on to talk about the significant strategic ties that India and Italy share with each other, a key European ally.
Well, the visuals, of course, show us the setting for the talks that are to follow. And this is an establishment and an announcement of informal and personal relations and ties between the two leaders. And that is something that, people certainly in India have, begun to expect. That is the first expectation that, we're going to see the connect between those two leaders. And we are being shown that connect because this is a visit that's begun with the kind of scenes that we are witnessing now. This is the sort of thing friends do, tourists do together. So here are the two prime ministers hanging out at the Colosseum, which is, of course, the most iconic landmark here in Rome. And that sets the political scene as well, because these personal, cordial relations are certainly intended to become the springboard for some political fallout. Certainly, they cannot be an end in itself. We are seeing signs of a determination to strengthen ties between India and Italy. On trade, certainly. In defense, certainly, we had the Italian defense minister visiting India at the end of April, but also the India-Middle East Economic Corridor, as currently planned. Trieste in Italy is the end point, but we are a long way from getting there. A lot of difficulties along the way, particularly in the middle section across the Middle East. And so that is something the two leaders will talk about. The Prime Minister has tweeted that that will be a priority through the course of the talks.
Right. Sanjay, let's also talk about the joint op-ed which was penned by the Italian Prime Minister and Indian Prime Minister, both of them. What kind of deals or investments, major infrastructure investments, can really emerge out of this visit?
The leaders, we have to say, being leaders, have their limits. When it comes to investment and it comes to business, it's down to the investors, it's down to the business. They'll only do what's good for their firms and what's profitable for them. And to that extent, there is a fair bit of movement. You have a very large number of Italian companies that are set up in India. There are more on the way. We've heard from the Indian ambassador to Italy that a lot more investment is headed in the Indian direction. And of course, we are now seeing a very much stronger flow of Indian investment into Italy. So there's a great deal that's happening at the level of business. When the leaders meet, what they can do is to facilitate, to set up the environment, to set up an inviting legal framework. There are reports of difficulties with bureaucracy, certainly when investing in India. These are issues that the leaders can sort out. They can ease the path and set the stage. Finally, it's up to business to take their decisions. But the first step will have to be a dialogue between the two leaders to iron out any obstacles and to really get hurdles out of the way to creating this kind of a two-way business and trade flow.
Right. Now, Sanjay, India is also a very key player in the European Union. How might this visit really influence those relations, those EU relations? And how will India benefit from it?
Well, they have done so already. We heard from Ambassador Vani Rao that Italy was instrumental in the fairly swift final stage of signing of the FTA. The FTA has been negotiated for years, for decades in fact. It was then agreed very swiftly. No doubt there was a certain environment of difficulties with the US that pushed both India and the EU into the fast track into signing that deal. But when it came to the negotiation and the nuts and bolts, Italy played a very critical part. That is where there was a good deal of communication between the Indian government and the Italian government, and certainly Prime Minister Meloni has been going out of her way to take up India's case with the EU. We've seen evidence of that in the FTA, and there are reasons to believe that in times to come, when there are matters to be decided and agreed between India and the EU, Italy will again play a lead part and a very energetic role that would be supportive of the Indian case. And to that extent, this kind of warmth between the two prime ministers can only help.
Right. Now, Sanjay, I also wish to talk about the India-Middle East corridor here, because that is one thing which was mentioned by both the Prime Ministers in the op-ed today, and it's very significant to note that this is back in the focus once again. And do you think this will put back China's road belt initiatives back now?
You know, this corridor has 3 stages: India to the UAE by sea, then from UAE by rail, ideally mostly by rail, through Saudi Arabia, Jordan, Israel, and then by Israel to Italy by sea. The first and the third sections are easy. It's the middle section that, for obvious reasons, for obvious political reasons, and because of the war environment, is proving challenging. And this is something the leaders will talk about.
Right, Sanjay, thank you so much for shedding light on all those perspectives.